Mukundu.
Hashtag 21. Ndiyatukuza kwama-status hashtag 21. Yeah, as DJ Mox said, my name is Mono. I used to have a single dreadlock, and that's where the name Mono comes from, but my real name is Clive. So you know how it is with my nickname, they become bigger than your name. So that's what happened. I'm a musician, as he said. I've been a musician for the past 34 years. I've never done any other work except the music industry. So even most of the stuff that I'm going to say is very much related to people who are in the music industry, but it also relates to everybody. 2010, I turned 40, and when I turned 40, in most circles that I was part of, I was the oldest. I was the oldest backstage, I was the oldest in the music studios, I was the oldest on stage. As a result, younger musicians always came to me for advice, whether it was related to relationships, or it was related to marriage, or it was related to other stuff. As a result, I started noticing differences between my generation, the previous generations, and the current generation of men. And one thing that I noticed was that our generation, we had uncles, we would consult for advice. We had Wanasekuru, we had older people that would sit down with us. Our families and relationships were much tightly knit together than it is now. Because right now, I think most young people are getting all their knowledge from the TV. Because at my age, I remember when I was young, we'd even get sex education from your uncles. They would tell you everything about what a woman wants and how to treat women. And it was all good stuff. But the point is, we had a lot of education from our own relatives. But these days, most of our youth are getting their education from the TV. And 90% of the time is American TV. Have you ever noticed that in American television, the dumbest person in the family is always the husband or the father? Have you ever noticed it? If you watch The Simpsons, the dumbest man in the room is always Homer Simpson, who is the father. If you watch My Wife and Kids, the dumbest person in the room was the father, and the mother was the wisest person. So it might sound like a joke or something that is very insignificant, but it sends certain messages to people. As a result, I've noticed that our young men panic akupusa kakawanda. You notice that, like, as I've said, I'm in the music industry. I can give you a long list of musicians who are just busy looking for wealthy women to date so that they don't have to work for money. We've got a lot of those musicians, and I'm sure you've seen a number of times when things go sour, the woman goes on Facebook Live and says everything. And that's one element that I'm noticing a lot in the music industry. Kupusa kwacho kunobata ma-areas akawanda, even those who get married. Most of them, they copy what they see on TV. And on TV, the husbands that we see on TV, they are those that kneel down and say, will you marry me? Blah, blah. Go take my flowers. It's not part of our culture. But my point is, there's a certain level of kupusa. And some of the stuff that we copy on TV, it looks like very modern and everything, but end result, it even makes you less attractive. One thing that women are attracted to is authority. Authority and power. That's not attractive. And even if you ask women, they will tell you what makes them happy. They will not tell you what makes them horny. They tell you, I want a husband who cooks, a husband who cleans. It was survey. papaiswa zvimachinda zviri kudhiga mugarden zvikanzi vari attractive ndevapi vanhu vaonatsabvunzwa genuine, not zvepasocial media, because unoziva kuti pasocial media if you ask anybody on social media it's like you are asking somebody who is on stage. They'll end up performing, so they'll give you answers that gives them likes, but that won't be true. So the genuine answers angare kuti women were attracted more to the guys who were working ono chishanda kuti even ukacheka a woman can be happy kunonoita number 3 wemunhu ane power than kuita number 1 wazuze atoyaitoziva kuti pana mai guru opposita mai nini then yoita zvake number 3. And the one thing that I notice also apasina ka element kake kugona kufighter and protecting the family and sticking around when things are tough. My sister called me kubasa kwake the other time and asked me to speak to one of her co-workers. He was planning to divorce his wife because mkazi wachanga ita a mental problem. So she called me kuti we also kutaura naye. Why are you planning to divorce your wife? And he says she's been sick for a long time, blah blah blah, and it's a mental issue. I wanted to go back to her parents so that they see what they can do. And I said, all right, if you fall sick, is she going to do the same to you? And he says no. And then when the pastor was saying in sickness and pain, sickness was not flu. And the pain was not my mosquito bites. Sickness was sickness chaichaiyo kuti unogona kuzvitira tsvina, munhu anozvitira tsvina unofanira kutoklina iwewe kana uchinzi protect your wife. In the times protection yacho you need to protect her even from your own parents chaivo. Kana maparents angu paakaziva kuti she's an orphan, baba vangu vakatotaura kuti nherera dzine ngozi ndabve pano chichichi, and I had to fight kutaura kuti hapana kwaari kuenda. Wana zvikanzi kutaura kuti hapana kwauri kuenda uchirara mukitchen pafloor, because time yacho ndichiri kurara mukitchen mamhumzi. But I'm proud to say kuti I really fought for that woman. So that's what I talked to that young man. Chimuzati no mfana haikona kupusa because you are supposed to protect this woman. So what I did now is I started reading a lot of literature to beef up my knowledge, because nanda thrown with deep end counseling. Was a lot of fun and face a problem. So in 2020 I turned 50. So before 2020 I had written 2 books. I had published 2 books in the music essay. So I said to myself, since I'm turning 50, I think that I need to write something different. So I wrote a book called Main Vacuum. You know, when you write a book, you do a lot of research. So I did a lot of research. I read a lot of books just to beef up my knowledge so that I quote different sources. And one of the sources that I quoted a lot was a man known as Dr. Farrell. He wrote a book called Boy Crisis. And in that book, he says, since the advancement of the feminist movement, panika shift kakaitika, so focus yese is now on the girl child. The program for International Student Assessment, PISA, they did a survey in 2017 and they noticed that boys are lagging behind in all academic fields worldwide. Because focus yes yango pa girl child. The word masculinity has been hyphenated with the word toxic. It's as if being a man it's a sin or it's a crime. When the feminist movement started gaining ground, I think by now they should be celebrating. That's what I think. Because they've gained all they've been asking for. But instead of celebrating, they've become radical. Some statements here, all men are dogs. Alright, if all men are dogs, I was not encouraging it, but I was just saying we need to balance things. They want to paint a picture as if everything is smooth for the men. That's not true. Because if you check in prisons, the biggest number of people who are in prison, they are men. The biggest number of people who commit suicide are men. The majority of people who die in wars are men. Right now, there's a war in Ukraine. The majority are women and children. Those are some of the positive sides of masculinity. But these days, no one mentions those positive sides. wana bozi tikanzi pane fridge yoda kukwidzwa upstairs 10 floors, suddenly feminism disappears. Motikari yaponja kuri kunaya tine twin cab inoda kugadzirwa vhiri, all of a sudden feminism disappears because varume handimi varume zvoenda munogadzira mavhiri. Wana mbavha yonoka padho pane pachataura kuti nezuro ndakasukawo mapureti, saka nhasi chimbonochekawo mbavha panze apa. So I find kuti there are certain things zvingori natural. In America, at times they follow something, not because it's factual, they follow it just because it sounds good. So I find that statement here, that belief here, gender is socialized. It's a theory that was formulated by a doctor called Dr. Mani. He had an experiment on a boy child, so they had circumcision. And then he said, raise as a girl, vaitwa plastic surgery, vatobaiwa mahormones kuti azobuda mazamu chichichi, vanzi araiswe as a girl. But still, achikura kudaro, she was heavily socialized to be a girl. But achikura kudaro, aingoda kutamba achita wrestling dzinoita vakomana dzedzia. And everything about him was a boy, angangori mukomana. Kuti akatozobvunza ato teenager kuti, what's wrong with me? Until the mother told him that you were born a boy. But as it applies to surgery, was it Wamskan and you were socialized to be a girl and so forth. And he committed suicide. Pa YouTube, just search for the John Juan case of Canada. Saka that doctor akataura that theory yokuti gender is socialization is the same person akaita that experiment. But still, just because it sounds nice. Right now, truth is this collegism. And one thing that I'm very much against is the onslaught on patriarchy. Because I'm sure you've heard how people describe patriarchy. It's a prison somewhere in a banana republic. Patriarchy was just a division of social roles based on natural, biological, gender differences. Because remember, before civilization, kwengo muka hondo anyway. Imagine tipauya hondo ponzora ituda vanhu vanoswera vakagadha uko vaine mapfumo nemakano, then tikudawo mwari unobika uko, musina kuzwa kuenda munhu wese anongonanga kwake chaiko chaiko. Pakanzi pari kuya hondo, panapa pari kuya hondo, takagara tine vakadzi, tine vana, tine vakadzi vane nhumbu, tine vakadzi vari kumazi kwekwe. Vonzi pari kuya hondo, pari kudiwa vanhu vanonochengetedza uko. Obviously, biologically, they are stronger than women. Saka patriarchy was not abuse. So my point is, these days, there's a serious movement around the world to demonize masculinity, to demonize men. Every man is a potential rapist. Every man is a potential criminal. But every human being is a potential criminal. It doesn't mean to wakadzi muri vatsvenestereke kurontoona mwakadzi vantourayawo. So the idea behind writing the book was to motivate young men not to be ashamed of being men. Then later on in the book I also mentioned nyaya responsibility, because pane that issue yekuti vanhu vari kungomitisa vachingosiya vana ukatarisa around the world, nyika dzine highest crime rates, places like America, Jamaica, Brazil, even South Africa, there is a high rate of single motherhood. Because vana vari kukura vasina ana baba. Ansitaura kuti masingle mothers ari kutadza basa, because I was also raised by a single mother. But my point is kuti mwana akura ari rounded, they need both the mother and the father in the family. Kuti amai anonga musadaro mwana wangu zvinotodiwa futi izvozvo, but baba vanonga vachirova mazinya zvinodiwa futi. So you need that balance. Yekuti mwana wangu rama ingonzi mwana wangu musadaro hanzi na TD Jakes, they will be murmured to death. First time panoenda kuchikoro akasimudzirwa ruoko na-teacher autobudisa pfuti. And that's exactly what you see kunana America. So I would like to encourage my young men around kuti kana udecide kuroora, make sure kuti unatsoroora munhu wauri kuda, wanatsostudy, unazoona kuti ndiye here, because marriage is also a business decision. Because ukangotora munhu wese futi whatever business auchaita richatobhozhongorwa kumberi uko. Nokuva munoziva pana mukuru wenyika so akazombovhiringirwa nemudzimai aka handichataura zvamumazita, but kuinotangira kumba first. Yenyika inenge yato secondary ameno kana manzwa chivanhu chacho asina kutaura mazita. Pandangokurudzira vechidiki kuti in have been married for 28 years to the same woman. There comes a time where love becomes a decision, not a feeling. Yeah, my feelings yakangorika primary ningirine. Saka unoidona kuti vana vako vareizwe kuti vakuti vene the next generation yakasimba. You need to be a responsible father. You need to take your position to protect your wife, to protect your kids, and your children. They benefit more from your time than from your money. Thank you.